Good morning. This is Andy Mack in for Pat Kelly this morning. We press that button and then everything works. I'm in with Bob Estes, who has been doing news. We're covering all the bases here while Pat Kelly is on vacation. And if you miss Pat Kelly, I just want to say we do too.
Well, if you noticed, it takes like four of us to cover
Exactly.
Pat Kelly.
The man is like a human tornado. And I do want to say that as I heard Dave Emerson say yesterday, and I want to echo the sentiment, I want to thank the management of Benny Media and all the folks that support local radio here in Laconia on 1490 WEMJ. And I also want to thank Pat Kelly. I think that for giving me the privilege of sitting in the hot seat here while he is on vacation, taking turns along with Dave Emerson. Dirk Naden will be in on Monday to talk to Mayor Ed Engler, and this has been a lot of fun. But I think even beyond Pat's work ethic, the thing that I most admire about Pat, I have to say this because I know a lot of you that have met him will get it. The thing that is so great about Pat Kelly, one of the things that his energy is so much fun. The thing that I really love about Pat Kelly, I've worked with a lot of celebrities, a lot of great talent over my years in radio. And one of the things that's really interesting about Pat is, it is watching him around the public. And the interesting thing is the great stars out there, people that do a wonderful job that interacting with the public and treating them well, having a lot of fun with them. But the interesting thing about Pat is there are stars, and then there is Pat, who treats everyone he meets like a star. And I think that's a huge part of the reason that he is a household name here in the Lakes region and that he is such a beloved character. I mean, I love the guy. It's so great working with him. And I just want to take a moment to recognize him and thank him for allowing me to come in and mess up his show, or I'll try not to do that today. Welcome to Open Mic. The conversation happens at 527-1490, and you can also join the conversation on Twitter. The handle is at 1490 WEMJ. You can also find us on Facebook. We stream online as well at laconialocal.com. Open Mic presented by Canton Chevrolet. Canton can. Thank you very much for your support to Tom Canton and crew. We have got a lot to talk about this morning, and it is a favorite subject of mine. Again, this is Andy Mack. My real job is as a radio engineer for Benny Radio. The other thing that I do is I host a couple of weekend shows on Benny Media Properties, 93.3 The Wolf, and which is in the Lakes region in Concord, and 95.3 and 107.1 The Wolf in the Upper Valley. And part of that is I am host to the Wolf Outdoors. I'm an outdoor enthusiast, a certified mediocre fisherman, and I do have a lot of fun outside, and I like sharing about the outdoors. And there is something that is happening here that is of tremendous concern to me and probably to a lot of you. New Hampshire Fish and Game, the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department is facing a major funding shortfall. The department was funded through this biennium. That ended on June 30. That funding was done. Now, from my understanding is from the general fund, they moved over funds to partially cover the next biennium, but is nowhere near enough. And so what is happening is the commissioner has been empowered to increase fees to cover the shortfall, Bob. So this is causing a lot of, I tell you what, you use Facebook, go to the New Hampshire Fish and Game Facebook and take a look at the post about the possibility of funds increasing. So the reactions are understandably all over the map. But that's one of the things that we want to talk about today. At 9:30, we're going to be talking with Mark Beauchesne from New Hampshire Fish and Game on that precise subject. But this is something that is very near and dear to my heart, and I know it is very near and dear to the hearts of so many folks here in the Lakes region, where not only the outdoors, whether it's hunting, fishing, or wildlife watching, hiking, camping, OHRV riding, all that stuff. New Hampshire Fish and Game does a lot to expand that, make that experience a quality experience, and it's a key part to tourism here in the state. They make the experience great, and they do this. They're self-funded, and a lot of those methods, actually, we'll talk about this later. A lot of those methods of funding for Fish and Game are not keeping up with the steady increase in expenses. And that even extends to search and rescue, which is of tremendous concern. Again, we'll talk about these details coming up in just a little bit here. But before we go there, we don't, that as you can see, you may be able to tell by the tone of my voice that I'm pretty fired up about this. And look, being outside is fun too, and it's going to continue to be fun. I think that I have faith in our legislators and in the folks at Fish and Game. They will figure out a way to make this work. But part of the reason I do want to talk about this is because I don't think that the best way that this is going to happen is if we all get involved, if we talk to our legislators, if we urge them to find the ways to make it work. And I think where we can find that spirit is in our own experience. And I want to talk about those experiences first so that we can sort of tap into those in the discussion. There isn't anybody that you know, right, that it doesn't, I can't say there isn't someone you know that doesn't enjoy the outdoors. There are people out there that like being inside. It's like, there's bugs outside, the icky, don't want to do that. But for the most part, this is something that is very much a part of the fabric of New Hampshire life, and it is something that we all enjoy. Again, whether you're a hunter or an angler, or you just like to hike Mount Belknap, and actually something that I very much like to do. I do it for pleasure and for work. I started out by saying my main job is a radio engineer, and the transmitter tower for WLNH sits on top of Mount Belknap, overlooking Gunstock. We actually had to visit it just the other day, and I don't want my boss to know that they wouldn't even have to pay me to hike up that mountain. But I do really, it's a lot of fun being outside, getting up there, going to the fire tower. Certainly there are some amazing views of Lake Winnipesaukee, Bob. Mount Major is a very popular hiking destination, and certainly a quick scramble up and it's an incredible trail. It's so easy. Rattlesnake Mountain and those ledges above Squam are just jaw-dropping. That's one of the biggest payoffs for a short hike in the state, is to scramble up Rattlesnake Mountain, get to those ledges that basically hang over Squam Lake. You see Lake Kanesatka and Winnipesaukee in the distance, and it is really something, to behold. So not just hunting and fishing, lots of great activities to do in the Lakes region, even if you're just getting out on the Wow Trail and running alongside Opeechee. It is this is definitely a huge part of our lives out here. I know that you've enjoyed fishing with your sons in the past. We were talking off air earlier, Bob, about the fact that your goal this year, you've run into some health stuff. Life is what happens while you make other plans, right? But I know that I remember you talking about getting out fishing in the past. It's all something that's just it. Here's part of the New Hampshire ideal. You retire, you get to fish more.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a goal.
and that's what we were just saying is exactly that during, all these years, I love fishing, and fishing has been one of those few things where I can get away from all my tension and work and all those things that just, kind of, I'm not sure what the word is. It's not always negative, but all those things that, the traffic, the noise, the this, or that. going fishing was you go to a place where there's no noise except birds and mosquitoes,
Right.
and you can go out there and just look at the glimmer of the sun on the water,
Yes.
and you just kind of, if you're in a boat, you just kind of float, or if you're on the side, you're casting in, and you just hear, all you hear is that slap of the water
Exactly.
when it hits. And it's just so relaxing. It's just one of those things that just makes my blood pressure go down.
Exactly. I have had moments where, after a stressful day, our offices, of course, now, the WEMJ studios at the old Laconia Police Station at 51 Church Street, right here in downtown Laconia, which is so much fun to watch the world go by here from the studio. And we used to be located at Village West, just off of Guilford Ave. But one of the small advantages, not that it's far away from here at all, it's not, but one of the small advantages of working at Village West was that after a stressful day, all I had to do was go around the corner and I could run up the hill to Salt Marsh Pond. Now, if you haven't been to Salt Marsh Pond
It's been
in
a
Guilford,
few years.
it is a breathtaking location, and you want to talk about quietude that you can get to very, very quickly, because it's just out of the way, and it's this beautiful little pocket of water sitting on the top of this hill, that is basically a foothill of the Belknap Range, and it is just a beautiful place to go to. Nice trout pond, although the trout there are pretty smart, smarter than I am, I think. Well,
That's
they
because
are.
they've been there for years.
But it is that is one of the things that we seek. I mean, certainly when I go fishing, if I was looking to catch, and don't get me wrong, I like to be a catcher as opposed to a fisherman. There's fishing, there's catching. I do like to be catching, but it's fishing that, being out in that environment, exactly. The heart rate comes down. You're focusing on something. You've got something to focus on that takes you away from the worries of every day. Even if you're breaking your fishing pole or you're untangling a rat's nest in the line, it's taking your focus off of the stress at work, or hopefully it is. I've had some pretty crazy adventures like that over the years. But look, I'm good with it. You're paying attention to the environment because you're fishing. You're also in touch with, you're thinking about not only what is above the water, but what is below the water. So you kind of get the whole package. You're paying attention to the structure, the rocks. You're looking at hatches, the wildlife that is around you. You're seeing what they're doing. And it's one of those things that deepens the experience. And I think it's something that a lot of people that go in the outdoors, that's what they look for. They look for that connection. It's primal. It's primordial. It's instinctive. I think it's something that is very, very, and then we get back to, like I said, all the economic benefit when people want to come to New Hampshire, which is a great place to get outside.
To me, the one thing you missed that to me is most important, or a very large piece of this, is it's kind of like you have the Bose noise canceling headphones. You ever put those on?
Yes.
That's what it's like if you hit the right spot. Most of the places that I like to fish are like that. All of a sudden, you don't hear motorcycles, you don't hear cars, you don't hear trucks, you don't hear the traffic, you don't hear kids, you don't playing, you don't hear any of that.
Right.
All you hear, like I said, are the birds, the frogs, the chirping, and the things hitting the water. That's all you hear. That tranquility, that lack of, the sounds of
Right.
What's the word I'm looking for? Community and life in general
Right.
are gone.
Yes.
And you feel like you're in a place that nobody else is currently aware of
Sure.
except you.
Sure. And sometimes it's not just the quietude; it's the white noise of the river.
Exactly.
It's fishing the Pemmy in
Or a
in
brook.
Bristol.
Or the babbling
Right.
of a brook.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. It's
the Pemmy. That's one of my favorite places, by the way. But it's not
So
in
beautiful.
Bristol. See, I'm just across the line in a place where very few people are aware. And it's one of those where you have to go down a hill that I can't do anymore.
Uh-huh.
You have to literally climb.
Yeah.
I can't do that anymore. So I guess, it's lost. But that was one of my favorite places. you know.
See, everybody's got their little secret spot. That's the thing that's fun about this as well. There's with fishing, there are always tales. I've got a little tale for you when we come back about the Winnie Derby. And after that, we'll get back into this whole business of funding at New Hampshire Fish and Game and be talking to Mark Beauchesne again coming up at 8:30. Stick around. This is Open Mic, again presented by Canton Chevrolet. Canton can. This is 1490 WEMJ.
Summer's in full swing, and so is the Summer Bonus Tag Sale. Hi, Tom Canton from Canton Chevrolet in Laconia, announcing the Canton Summer Bonus Tag Sale. It couldn't be more simple. Choose your vehicle, apply rebates and discounts, and then you choose between purchase or lease bonus cash. 0% up to 72 months is also available. Bonus tags are hanging on the mirrors ready for selection. Canton Summer Bonus Tag Sale on virtually every model we sell, like Silverado, Equinox, Cruise, Malibu, Trax. The vehicle you want, we have a deal. How about saving up to $10,000 on your next new Silverado? GM Financial is approving 98% of our submitted credit applications. We can get you financed when others have failed. Good credit or bad, we're financing people and delivering low rates. Our goal is for 100% approvals. No fancy, fast-talking disclaimer. Canton Chevrolet featuring great selection, lower payments, no out-of-pocket expense at delivery, and the best buying experience. All at no extra charge. Canton Chevrolet, Union Avenue, Laconia. Canton Chevrolet, find new roads.
Canton can.
Now, back to Open Mic on 1490 WEMJ. To be on today's show, call 527-1490. That's 527-1490. And like us on Facebook, where the conversation is always on. Now, here's EMJ's Pat Kelly.
Good morning. This is Andy Mack, host of The Wolf Outdoors and Country Legends Sunday on 93.3 The Wolf, filling in for the vacationing Pat Kelly with Bob Estes. Love that news, Bob. You do such a nice job with that.
You're going to embarrass me, if you
That's part of the
hear
idea.
that, or I'm going to come over and hug you.
And that will embarrass me. So so here's the thing:
Tit for tat.
We had talked about. I had mentioned earlier that I have a fish story for you because with fishing, come on, there's always fish stories, and I have no shortage of them. But one of the things that I had hoped to do this morning was to bring in my fishing partner, Roger Prue of Just Maple. Now, you may remember Roger from the days of from earlier in the spring when WEMJ took basically Open Mic on the road and did an entire show during Maple Weekend from Roger's location in Tilton. It was a lot of fun, but one of the things that is great about Roger is not only do he and his wife Barbara make wonderful maple, but Roger is quite an accomplished fisherman. Of course, he won't tell you that, but he's very consistent. He adheres to a lot of the basic rules. You know, you can't catch a fish unless the line is in the water. You know, you've got to keep your lines wet. All those basics, and I think he works very hard at working on finding what works, finding where the fish are, and talking to people, talking to locals that have been looking for, searching for any given species in any given area. Okay, there's your preface. But here's the other thing. I don't know if you remember or not. Roger was one of these guys, amongst the many of us, that, and myself included, that has fished the Winnie Derby. And in 2009, the last year that Rick Davis and his family presided over the Winnie Derby before Laconia Rotary took it over, and they now do such a wonderful job with it. But it was a very memorable year for a number of reasons. I was reporting for the Wolf Outdoors. I was out on a chartered boat for the entire Derby with another master angler of Lake Winnipesaukee, guide Jason Parent of Salmon Patrol Fishing Charters. We were reporting, so I wasn't on the boat with Roger. But on Friday morning, and those of you that have fished the Derby, you know how this usually goes. Every now and then, a fish that's caught first thing on Friday makes it through the Derby. Roger calls me and he says, I've got a fish that's probably 25 and a quarter in the boat. And Jason immediately looks at me. I tell him, he looks at me and says, is it a male or a female? Because males are typically lighter. And he says, well, it's probably a board fish, but I don't know if it's going to do it. Roger had reported that this large salmon was a male. And as it turns out, the fish was just over 4 pounds, and it held on through Friday for the leaderboard. Roger won daily prizes on Friday. This was, again, Winnie Derby in 2009, and it held on through Friday. He won his daily prizes. It held on through Saturday. Roger fully expected to get bumped from the board, and then Sunday came, and Roger woke up very, very nervous. Suddenly it hit him, because what happened was that particular year, he had caught the only fish of the weekend that was the only salmon that was over 4 pounds. And so it was still sitting on the board Sunday morning. And I was there at Weirs Beach with Rick Davis as time approached at noontime at the end of the Derby, and it was still on top of the board. And my favorite thing that happened here is it Don Miller, I believe, that just retired from New Hampshire Fish and Game after decades of service. He was there, I believe, with Rick, and Rick with his, for those of you that remember Rick Davis, very dry sense of humor. As time approached, about 5 minutes to noon, the Winnie Derby was about to end. Rick looks at Roger and says, Roger, we just got a call in that a guy said that he's got a very large salmon, thinks it might be 5 pounds, and we have agreed amongst everyone here that we're going to add another 15 minutes on the Derby to give him time to come in. Rick did this, of course, just so Roger's face could go ashen.
Flush.
And then time was called at noon, and Roger wound up winning the boat back when they gave away boats and the bragging rights for the Derby. So it was really quite an adventure to watch, a friend go through this whole process and catch the big one, so to speak. But that is,
I didn't realize Roger
the Winnie
won
Derby is such a huge part of Lakes Region culture, as is the Great Rotary Ice Fishing Derby. And it is, New Hampshire Fish and Game is an integral part of that whole process. They're biologists at the leaderboard, looking at the fish, checking for the Winnie Derby, looking at fin clips and the year of the fish, and everything is determining fish health, hook injury, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that makes a difference in how the lake is managed, and that makes a difference in how we are able to then go out and enjoy, fishing in the lake. In some cases, Atlantic salmon, landlocked salmon, but Atlantic salmon right here in New Hampshire, something you typically have to go to the Pacific Northwest for, well, not Atlantic salmon, but you know what I'm saying, Bob, is that, something you would typically have to go to Canada for. It is right here in New Hampshire, and it's managed beautifully by New Hampshire Fish and Game. So overtime for me to call Mark Beauchesne. We're going to come back and chat with him about funding New Hampshire Fish and Game. Their biennial budget just ran out on June 30th. They've got something from the general fund to carry them into the next biennial, but now there is talk about they need to increase fees to cover the shortfall. We're going to discuss that with Mark when we come back. This is Open Mic on 1490 WEMJ.
To be on today's show, call 527-1490. That's 527-1490. And like us on Facebook, where the conversation is always on. Now, here's EMJ's Pat Kelly.
And I'm not Pat Kelly. I know Pat Kelly, and I'm no Pat Kelly. Welcome to Open Mic. This is Andy Mack, host of The Wolf Outdoors and Country Legends Sunday on 93.3 The Wolf, sister station to WEMJ. Filling in for the vacationing Pat Kelly. on Open Mic with Bob Estes in This Week Doing News as we try to cover all the bases that Pat single-handedly covers, and now it requires about 4 people to do this. So this morning, one of the things that we are certainly talking about being in the outdoors as a New Hampshire way of life, what it means to the New Hampshire's culture, to the economy, and how important New Hampshire Fish and Game's role is in making that experience a good one. It means a lot, especially in the Lakes region, where tourism is a huge part of the economy. And again, as we fold it back again, a huge part of Lakes region way of life. On the phone with me this morning from New Hampshire Fish and Game, Mark Beauchesne. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning, Andy, and thank you for having me on this morning. And, you know, you hit it just right. We are in the business with connecting people with life outdoors. Lakes region to the North Country and everything in between, you know, this agency has a role in people's lives and also in the animals that we support and the habitats that they live in. So.
Right. You know, it really is something to think about, the fact that, okay, so this last biennial budget ended on June 30th, and
Correct.
then, if my understanding is correct, money was moved from the general fund to partially cover the next biennial, and this sort of creates a situation where now you have to be talking about increasing fees to cover that shortfall. Looking at the New Hampshire Fish and Game Facebook page, reactions are all over the map, probably understandably, about this possibility. And there's a meeting coming up to a hearing about this as well. Probably will be several.
Yeah, there's a hearing with the commission next Wednesday. And, you know, it is tough because, you know, what we're talking about here is a potential license fee increase, along with maybe some other fees and things like that. But you'd mentioned the budget as a whole. During the legislative season that just ended, we actually were granted the ability to set our own fees. Now, you might be thinking, wait a minute, you've never been able to set your own fees the whole time? That's true. The legislature has been the ones that have been the responsible for setting fees and license fees and increases. It's been 12 years, Andy, since we've seen a fee increase.
Wow.
That's a long time. Yeah. And if we had that ability to make these adjustments as the need arose, this wouldn't be a painful subject. People would have been, okay, yep, I understand. You know, the need is there. But, you know, it's been a long time coming. You know, we talk about this budget shortfall. Well, it didn't just happen in 2 years. It happened over, you know, probably a 10 to 15-year period of time. During that time frame, there's been significant cuts here at the agency, staff cuts, et cetera, vehicles not being upkept or not replaced when they should have been, safety reasons-wise even. So we felt the pain here. We felt the pinch, and we tried to absorb as much of this as we could internally. But now we're going to have to reach back to the sportsmen and say, hey, we need your help. We may not be having this conversation, or we wouldn't be having this conversation if there was a broad-based funding for the Hampshire's Fish and Wildlife. When I say broad-based, it means just not the sportsman taking care of it all, but each citizen has a role here. You look out the window and you enjoy seeing birds or knowing that there's wildlife in your backyard.
Right. And let's break that down here. So I can see from your information up on the Fish and Game website, about a third of your revenue comes from fishing and hunting licenses and permit fees. So we're talking about if we increase those fees, that's only having an effect on a third of the funding. Another third coming from dedicated federal funds, including revenues from the Wildlife and Sport Fish Restoration Program, state
Correct.
wildlife grants, the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration. Remaining third coming from a mix of sources such as OHRV registrations, unrefunded motorboat gas tax transfers, and other agency income. Probably that includes T-shirts and hats.
T-shirts, hats, fines, you know, things, little things like that, little bake sale items, you know.
You've got to make it work.
And, you know, 60 years ago, Andy, this worked great. 30 years ago, we started to see a change. 20 years ago, there's a huge change. You know, we have less people that participate in hunting and fishing. There's, you know, our population has aged in New Hampshire. This is something we saw coming back in the 80s when we actually had a grocery store that was very close by. When this North American model was developed in 150 plus years ago, it worked great because everybody hunted and fished because they had to. That's how they fed their families. That's how they sustained themselves. But as we matured as a nation, and this is not just a New Hampshire problem, this is all over the place, we got away from that roots, and now it's become recreation, and not as many people recreate as that once did it as they had to. That was a tough one to get out.
Mark, if you can hear me, I'd like to ask you, if I understood what you were saying, and this sounds kind of promising, that basically the talks haven't started yet, but there's a good possibility that aside from just somewhat of an increase in some of the fees, there's a chance maybe that we may be able to get the state or the legislature to impose some kind of funding as well for the Fish and Game?
Yeah,
you think that's
there's
possible?
always a chance there, and it's one of those things that politics is politics aside. Nobody wants to have a new fee. Nobody wants to take money from somebody else to pay for something that you've already been getting all along. How it's been sustaining itself, I don't know. But I think that our legislators as a whole need to take a good look at this and say, what is the value of wildlife in New Hampshire? How does that wildlife affect tourism? And when I say wildlife, of course, that's fish included. What do healthy populations of wildlife and fish and open space mean? Is there a dollar value on that when it comes to, tourism or getting people here or just quality of life as a citizen of New Hampshire? And I think the legislature should take a look at that and say, there is something here. I mean, it is worth something, and it's worth, saying out loud that, we need to do this, whether that be a portion of an existing fee or tax or whatever you want to call it, or something new.
But ultimately, if the legislators are going to be, I'm sure many of them are motivated to help, but the way that this really works is that they are elected by the people and work for the people, and it's the people that need to urge them to move on this.
Right, exactly. And that's, there's other states that have, support from Fish and Wildlife agencies. Our neighbors to the north, to our east, west, and south, all receive a portion of general funds to support those Fish and Wildlife agencies. Those folks probably will not see a license increase of any significance going forward over the next 4 or 5 years. They don't need to because they have that support for the other work that happens that's not necessarily directed to hunters and anglers. I mean, everybody has a stake in wildlife. It shouldn't just be the sportsman paying for it.
Right, and that's the key. I think that's certainly the key part of the dynamic that we are talking about here. There's no wrong or right to it. The fact that there are not more hunters and anglers than there have been, the fact that is sort of flattened out or is even perhaps dropping off a little bit, it's a reality, but there are certainly no fewer people getting into New Hampshire's outdoors. And I would bet, I haven't seen any numbers, but I would bet there's more people than ever getting outside of New Hampshire. And a lot of this is, okay, here we are. It's live free or die, right?
Correct, yeah. It's on my license plate.
On mine, too, and I firmly believe in it. Thank you, General John Stark. But I do believe that this is something that requires supporting, and I hope that there's some way that we can find a way for those that are not. There's a lot of people that enjoy the fruits of your labor. That's what I'm saying, is that we've got to find a way. There must be a way to make this work because it means a lot.
Right. Thank you, Andy. And then, going forward, as we deal with our public in regards to this potential change in fee, we, as you said earlier, Facebook posts were all over the place. People are brave behind a television and a computer screen. But, one of the biggest things was, I can't afford it. Well, how much really is it? If you were a resident and you did the full boat of licenses now, it's about $200 for a whole year worth of fun. That's every day.
Right.
It's hardly a weekend away with your family.
Right.
So it's putting that value on your recreation and what you do. It gives you so much more than just the opportunity to go out and take game or catch a fish and things like that. So, we're talking a small amount of money for the amount of recreational value that you get, even with a modest increase.
Right. This
You know,
is,
even at $35 for a resident now, that's cheap money. I mean, it's pennies a day.
in my opinion, is the same. I believe that it is more than fair, and I think that maybe what we should do. We got to take a little break here, but what we'll do is we'll take a short 2-minute break. We'll come back and talk about how do we fix this? Mark Beauchesne from New Hampshire Fish and Game. It's Andy Mack here with Bob Estes, and for the vacationing Pat Kelly on Open Mic presented by Canton Chevrolet. Canton can. This is 1490 WEMJ. Thanks for listening. We'll be back in just a couple.
Now, back to Open Mic on 1490 WEMJ. To be on today's show, call 527-1490. That's 527-1490. And like us on Facebook, where the conversation is always on. Now, here's EMJ's Pat Kelly.
This is 1490 WEMJ and Open Mic. Andy Mack in for the vacationing Pat Kelly with Bob Estes and Mark Beauchesne from New Hampshire Fish and Game. This morning we are talking about the funding shortfall at New Hampshire Fish and Game. And in short, one of the things that they're talking about is the possibility of increasing fees to cover that shortfall. Now, hopping up on my soapbox again, Mark, I think one of the things that I'm so passionate about here with this is that I feel that, if you look at the New Hampshire Fish and Game website, well, I know you do, but there's all kinds of non-game things there, lots of stuff for kids, and to me, it's a little bit of a snapshot of all the things that happen in New Hampshire that New Hampshire Fish and Game is involved with, whether it is protecting lands along the Blue Ribbon stretch of the Connecticut River, an accomplishment that was done in recent years, adding significant acreage to that outdoor space up there, or protecting the habitat of the Carner blue butterfly, information about endangered turtles, and basically just protecting and caring for a way of life in the state. The New Hampshire Fish and Game really does just a mind-boggling amount of work to make this work. And to me, the biggest part of the connection here is tourism. And tourism is not just tourism dollars for the area economy. When people come up here and they bring their bikes, or they bring their hiking boots and tents, fishing poles, or they go to hunt the woods, they add a tremendous amount to the New Hampshire economy, Lakes Region economy, absolutely. It's not only that. They're spending money for fuel. That equals taxes to the state. They're staying at places, rooms and meals taxes going to the state. This is a healthy economic thing overall. So it gets back to how do we fix this? How are we going to make this work? Because I think it has to happen.
Yeah, there's a conversation there, Andy, that has happened and will continue to happen. Is that there is a straight line that we can draw with healthy outdoor recreation and wildlife and the habitats that support that. We can draw a straight line to rooms and meals tax dollars. Pretty simple. Not everybody comes here for Storyland, but on their way up to Jefferson to Storyland, they're going to see some beautiful habitat, maybe a moose on the way, and that is all supported by, for the most part, the sportsmen of New Hampshire, the men and women. Now, could we have a conversation that that there's a connection there between rooms and meals tax and outdoor recreation? Sure, but how do we start that?
Right.
Who's the champion for this one? Because having looked into this briefly, I did see that there was some support, and we're not talking about a huge chunk here. It was half of 1% of the entire rooms and meals tax on a biannual basis, which is a small amount. There were folks that were in support of it, said, yes, we support it, but don't raise the tax. And folks that supported it, they said, yes, but don't take a piece of my pie. So we're kind of stuck in the middle, and it's not a topic that there's any political bravery to even start that conversation over in our legislature.
Right.
At least I haven't seen one yet, because they know it's a two-sided sword here.
Right. Well,
and it's
with all due respect to our legislators, who are at least they show up. God bless them. They're doing they've got a job to do. They do their best. But one of the things that I believe they need is they need input from the citizens. It's really the thing that drives democracy. Again, where's that soapbox? I guess I must have added yet another one. It's one of the things
layer
that drives that democracy. I'm on 2 soapboxes now. Citizens contacting their legislators, asking them to get active to make this happen. This is the thing that's going to make the difference, because I understand the heritage with this as well. I understand the whole business with it. Live free or die, man. There's no income taxes here, and we
tax free.
We tax free, and we do enjoy considerable economic benefits from that. It's certainly something that is another thing that attracts people to the state to vacation here. It attracts tourism dollars, and you can understand that people would be extremely sensitive about increasing the taxes that are there. But something's got to give. Something's got to figure it out, and I think that it's the public that can provide the impetus for this to happen.
Right, I agree. And if it's something that you can say, yes, that visitor came here because of this fish, then you draw a straight line there and say, okay, shouldn't that be supporting the overall efforts of the agency that does this work for all of New Hampshire citizens and their visitors? And you've mentioned a couple of times, Andy, quality of life, and I have grew up in Concord and lived along the Merrimack River for nearly 50 years, and I've watched that river change, and get clean and grow, and a fishery come back and things like that. And
it makes a big difference. We're going to have to go here in about 20 seconds, but I do understand that. I know, right? We could do this for hours and hours.
We could.
Thanks so much for joining us here. I think we'll probably have something for another show. Open mic
Sounds
at 1490 WEMJ.